You are watching Travel World Online.
I was just remembering that when you mentioned the first 100 aircraft order, that was 2005. I was 29 years old.
Oh, really?
I think I took the Indigo operating role in 2008.
Right.
So, yeah, I don't know, somewhere between 16 and 20 years.
Absolutely wonderful. So tell us, if you get to look at the reason I picked up the discussion with you, because I think there's anything just to give us insights that we're looking at. First, from your perspective, what is the state of the industry, your outlook for the medium term and let's say long term? What do you think, where are we headed?
So I think, Kapil, one thing that has not changed, right? The one thing that has not changed is that demand continues to outstrip supply. And that is basically, gives you that sort of short-term confidence and the medium-term confidence. But I think what's different this time, and I was talking to a friend of mine who's an investor, and he says, as an investor, the most dangerous thing you can say is it's different this time. But I think what's different this time is that even more that mature markets like the United States or Europe, the fact that the policymakers, stakeholders, government, customers, they see aviation as a very integral part of the India growth story. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and you're senior to me in the business couple, there was a whole thing about fighting the perception that airlines, aviation is for the rich. That I think has firmly gone out of the window. So the fact that policymakers see aviation as a very integral part of the India growth story and overall supply chain, not just airlines but cargo and logistics and so on and so forth. That's, I think, what's giving this really boost of confidence to short-term, medium-term, and long-term. More in the short term, look, it's only now that we are beginning to catch up with the capacity that was there pre-pandemic. It's taken 5 long years to get back to where we were. And if you look at GDP growing at about 7-8%, even if you take 7%, aviation and capacity has to grow for at least 14-15% to be able to kind of take it, right? So in summary, short, medium, or long term, I find that this is really a great business to be in, whether as an investor, whether as an employee, or and as people who are part of the ecosystem.
I'm glad that you said that it's a great industry, because whenever we have some people starting an airline, there have been discussions in the recent few weeks about people saying exceptional profits, airline industry to consolidate, there is a gap for us. There are many startups who are looking at the industry. Again, what I asked just now and Vinay also about is consolidation. How do you see a consolidation from your perspective as this big mega carrier? Another mega carrier in the middle, between them about 90%. How do you think this plays out? And I'm not wanting to see an answer hat right now, just your experience of it.
Well, I think I'll answer it in 2 different ways. As far as India is concerned, we are in a phase where it's difficult to start a new airline in India for the next, let's say 5-6 years, because there is just no aircraft again, at least new aircraft. Which basically means that structurally there's a moat. Second, because of this sort of, there being now 3-4 players, and the fare environment being in a certain way, professional management and so on and so forth, I think further consolidation is not necessary for airlines to do that. Put another way, and I think Vinay said something like this, that the success of one airline in India today is no longer dependent on the failure of another. which is a very, very interesting, place to be in. So irrespective of consolidation, I think airlines in India, well-run airlines in India, have a lot of money to make and have a lot of growth trajectory ahead. This is one part of the answer. But if we look at it globally, and when you look at, let's say, if we can learn from mature markets like the US and what happened with consolidation there, post-consolidation there, I think pre-pandemic, the big four, Southwest Airlines, American, Delta, and United, controlled maybe 70% of the market. And even today, they control about 60%. 2015, 2016 saw the highest ever profit margins in the airline business. And that was a combination of consolidation, which led to better fare discipline, better capacity discipline. It led to closing of the gap in terms of cost difference between full service carriers and low cost carriers. And a lot of investment in efficiency of the airlines. So if that is something that we can draw lessons from, you're beginning to see the early green shoots of that. RASK is up as compared to last year. Capacity is being deployed in a rational sort of way. There is long-term planning and so on and so forth. So I think, like I said, even without further consolidation, we're in a good spot. But this situation that is now played out, I think for the next at least 5-7 years, we have a clear path to good, sustainable, financially sustainable growth. I purposely don't use the word profitability because some airlines will make money, some airlines will take a little bit longer because of legacy issues. Yeah. But I think it's definitely a more financially sustainable future.
The reason I ask this to you is that there isn't any market, at least to our knowledge, where consolidation has happened and simultaneously exceptional growth by the two bigger players in the industry. If we see the consolidation in 2003 to 10, Air India, Indian Airlines merger, Kingfisher, Deccan, Sahara, and Jet Airways, which became Jetflight, it didn't deliver the results. Because there was an expansion of a very different model planned already. Normally, consolidations rationalize capacity and improves assets to do the profitability. India is the almost opposite. So do you see anything different when happening in India because of this consolidation?
So, the way I see this phase different from what happened now, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, is I think the reasons for consolidation and merger this time around is more to do with creating efficiency, is more to do with to take away duplicity. The only strong measure of caution that I put on that is it's easy for bad habits to creep in when there is a lot of growth. We in India have to take advantage of the fact that we have this huge growth ahead of us because of this whole India consumption story. But while bearing that in mind, we must, as airline people, not forget the bad days and use that to look for efficiencies within our system. Between 2015 and 2005 and 2016, full service carriers in the United States closed the gap with low cost carriers up to 40%. In Europe, they were able to close the gap to 35%. I think we have to create the same amount of discipline here so that efficiency can come in. And if we can create efficiencies and take advantage of this growth, we really have a golden period.
Now coming back to generally with your experience, what will it take for industry? We talked about it in a broader manner, coming to a specific question. What will it take for industry to be structurally profitable? And again, not an answer you, broader 20 years experience.
I think, look, when do airlines go into trouble? Either there is a cost shock or there is a demand shock. From everything that we've heard this morning, that we all say in India, I think the demand shock is probably not there. Right? unless there's some kind of another pandemic and it impacts everybody for a certain period of time, that's truly a black swan event. Let's not discuss that. Let's focus on the cost structure. What are the 4-5 big elements of cost? There is fuel, there is maintenance, there is aircraft ownership, there is payroll, right? And if we look at that, then I think what will lead to structural viability is two things. One, is there a continuous cost improvement program in each one of these companies? Because we're such a low margin business, we have to be very careful about every cent that we spend. So whether it is payroll or whether it is fuel, I think we have to kind of look at all of that. The second is, from a fare perspective, not demand, but from a fare perspective, do we have the discipline to charge a fare that meets the cost at which whatever is the service I'm providing, whether you're a full service carrier, low cost carrier, whatever you are, whatever is the service that you're providing, do you have the physical discipline to charge a fare that meets those costs? That's a combination of passenger fares, it's a combination of ancillary revenues. I think ancillary revenues is another big element. If you look at the IATA reports, if ancillary revenues were not there, most airlines in the world would not even be able to recover their cost of capital, let alone any profit. And from 2007, when 10% of the total revenue was ancillary revenues, today it is about 20-25% at a global trend. So further unbundling, price discipline, fare discipline, and focusing on cost structure, I think is where. And I think that, there is some element of improvement even in margins. I'll give you two statistics, couple again things that you will be familiar with. Globally at normalized levels, and I'm not talking about low cost carriers, I'm talking about as a global trend. Fuel is typically 27% of total cost. Today it's running at about 31%. So there is 4 percentage point improvement that is possible. Similarly, margins, which were as high as 5%, are globally right now at about 3.1%. So there is a little bit of improvement also.
So the other point is when you talk about demand, when you talk about cost, there is this critical element in India, nobody knows it better, is oversupply. And even though it creates a stimulatory impact and gets more passengers, it basically just changes your revenue environment, which is to the question just to you about the fares. So when the supply side gets back to normal, how does Indian carrier, what do you need to do to hold the revenue environment in a more stable manner, given the learnings that we had for the last 20 years?
To be honest, we need to see an improvement in the revenue environment. Today at $55-60 an average fare, we are still sitting at one of the lowest fare environments in the world. And I think all of us know that cannot structurally be the way that the industry goes. You can't have the highest cost structure and the lowest fares, right? But what we have seen is, and here I am obviously not talking as Akasa, I'm saying, in the last few years I have a fair amount of exposure to other consumer businesses as well. We have seen Indian consumers accepting a higher tariff, if I may call it that, for better, more reliable service. Whether it is bus transportation, whether it is railways, whether it is quick commerce or whatever it is. So on the back of good consumer-focused, reliable businesses, I think there's an opportunity for Indian consumers to pay.
We talked about the cost structure. Our team normally would get paid on advising clients. One of the key things that we hear, particularly as a best practice, is that when you look at EasyJet, when you look at Ryanair, there is a direct procurement, and it's normally like direct costs. They obviously know that ancillaries are a key part. But the other aspect is that every year they will target, shave off 0.5% of cost, shave off a percentage of cost, and and that means you have to exit this road wall. So, in terms of the cost discipline, do you think in your experience we've reached the stage? Though we have been doing a lot more on the cost, but it's so different and we have tomorrow busier CEO, so that will be one of my questions. It is fanatic about costs. And do you know who is heading the director of procurement at Ryanair is the former CEO of Air Deccan, Bradley. The task for them is that shave off 0.5% cost, relook at contract, change your procurement. Because I will be, even though I have an upside in financial, I will not be able to go beyond. So, but I still want to maintain certain double-digit margins. So, my point to you is that having reached a stage, or are we going to reach a stage that where we get these cost structures and the ability to attack it almost on a quarterly basis, and if it frankly doesn't make sense to do this, you look at moving that asset out to somewhere else. Have we reached the stage?
Yeah, so there are lots of my ex-colleagues here in Europe, engineering, flight operations, commercial. Something that we used to always say is that the airline business is not about that $1 billion idea, it's a $1 billion idea that you've got right. If I give you my honest, not politically correct answer, I think as an airline industry, we have not imbibed cost leadership as an integral part of our culture that we look at on each and every day. And now moving to industries which are not the airline industry. The company which produces the smartphones at the lowest cost structure is not Samsung or Huawei, but it is Apple. Right? So therefore, you can work towards a fiercely competitive cost structure and yet churn out a very, very high quality product. I think that the miss is where people feel that to churn out a very high quality product, you have to throw a lot of money at the problem. I think today technology and processes and better, smarter minds has repeatedly shown in good airlines and in industries across that you have to make cost leadership as not about cutting costs, but about creating efficiency. So that meant that sometimes you've got to spend money on something which is going to create huge cost efficiency over a period of time, whether it is better technology, equipment, whatever it may be. So I think there is still a lot of room for us as an industry to really imbibe the cost side of it, or the laser sharp focus on cost as a part of our culture.
In fact, probably one of our buzzwords is that don't cut cost always. Resources, use technology, use it. Now coming on the other side is that with this supply side, we are a supply-driven industry, largely SLBs and many other factors. I don't see the change. So, if you are individual in part 60 or 62, for rest to maintain, you have to grow, keep going. So we would not see a supply side constraint, supply side rationalization. So what is the ideal supply that you think is going to be generating a fair return to the shareholders?
Kapil, if I kind of look at it from a foreseeable future, like private equity players look, right? 5, 7, 8, 12 years at maximum. If you look at the next 12 years, we are going to be far away from a situation where there is an oversupply. We have to just maintain that the current supply that it looks like, from all the orders that have been placed, you can do some reasonable math to see how much is replacement, how much is addition. I think we will still be below GDP, right? And so therefore, I don't see that as being a problem. I'll only again and again say that if some airlines are in financial trouble, they should not go and start dumping fares in a situation where you just put in some cash, because that then creates a downward spiral. And I think from everything that I've heard from every CEO since this morning, everybody is hopeful that people are going to have that discipline to run a profession.
And particularly when the capacity is so tight. We talk about cost leadership quickly before coming to this theme of profitability discipline. Is that, frankly, the basis of our advice, consultation, talking to industry, doing regularly? Do you have a sense that do we have that profitability discipline? Because we talked about these best practice airlines and having a cost discipline. There is simultaneously a profitability discipline. Every rupee, every dollar which can accrue to the bottom line is being taken care of. It's a fanatic approach. You see Ryanair CEO, the way he talks, so they're very successful in many ways. So what do you think do we have a profitability discipline? And this, I think is when this desire to be profitable.
Yeah, I think this is the first year, maybe since last year, I have felt that each of the leadership teams or management teams in India today, either out of necessity or out of desire, are chasing profitability finally. Because we are all custodians of somebody else's capital. Whether they're all private shareholders today or public markets, and they are looking at your performance. So I feel that definitely people are chasing profitability, but I think the step change that has to come is when my friend Rajiv Bajaj once said to me, Aditya, in business, just as in life, it's often more important to know what to do. So I think leadership teams will have to start making some tough decisions to say, if I want to be profitable, these are the 3 things I'm going to do, these are the 5 things I'm not going to do. And these are tough decisions. These are sometimes, sort of correcting mistakes of the past. But unless those tough decisions happen in the interest of customer, employee, and investor, we'll have a problem. But definitely, I think everybody's focused towards trying to create a profit.
Again, relying on your experience, are the boards of companies equipped to make sure that the management team stays on the profitability discipline?
It's difficult to answer that, but I think, but probably let me put it this way, that the boards of airlines in India today are more experienced than they've ever been before, in terms of really understanding the fundamentals of the business. And there is now so much literature and there is so much, advice available to people who want to listen. I would say, let me put it another way, management teams or boards don't have an excuse anymore.
The other part is that you talked about the ancillaries part.
Yes.
You know that we are suboptimal in this case. If you take cargo off, it will be 5-6%. Yes. And then Zoom does this 5-6%. We talk about cost mindset, profitability mindset, leadership mindset. Do we have the mindset of a retailer, which is critical to make sure the ancillaries works? So the current set of people who work on ancillaries are basically traditionalists with an airline experience. So you need somebody who is just basically looking at, footfalls in a mall or things like that. Do you see the mindset change?
I have to agree with you there, Kapil. I really think that the next phase will be when we as airlines stop thinking of ourselves as only a transportation business, but we see ourselves as a consumer business. Today, a Swiggy or a Zomato knows more about your needs and your behavior and what you will need, and will say, it's been 10 days since you ordered this, repeat order, and you do repeat order, and it's there. And we ask 100 questions before we can take people from point A to point B. And so I think a big mindset shift has to happen where we start seeing ourselves as a consumer business, and not just a transportation.
And lastly, apart from aviation, what are the new ventures that you're going to start? You do a lot on private equity player now almost.
The one
before you say that, my question is, I have not seen your investments in aviation so much. Whether it's in the tech side or building a new distribution capability. So there's a lot that can happen. In fact, you to some extent create an ancillary technology to be used by the airlines. So do we see the private equity side of you investing in airline related?
There's one business that I'm actually flying to Chennai for that tomorrow night. There's a eVTOL business that I have an investment and I'm on the board of. My ex-colleague Salim has an interest in another eVTOL business in the US. So I think, this electric mobility or some kind of a hybrid mobility, I think there is going to be a lot of. Salim and I are not competing. Salim is longer range, mine is multi-hop. So I think there we have a lot of interest. My colleague Stanislav from Russell Kema Airport is here. He's the chief commercial officer. I'm on the board of Russell Kema. We have a lot of activity going on there. So I'm not divorced from aviation. I am involved in airport
would attract capital in terms of perhaps investing in getting investments in, let's say, creating a standard digital sort of an infrastructure, working on how to create ancillary technology, maybe looking at localization of GDS.
Absolutely.
So many areas where.
Oh, for sure. I think we are going to go through a massive transformation. And there's a lot of private equity or VC interest in kind of creating efficiencies in various parts of this. But I think what will happen probably is that there'll be these small slices of the problem that people will be looking to solve.
My last question is that you and IndiGo were synonymous in many ways. It created an exceptional asset in the industry like yourself. And we talked about it last couple of days, discussions. Actually, how are you taking that and making sure we have in the cost of multiple other years? It's very rare, to be honest with you, in my experience, of that symbolic growth of the individual and the company together. Very rare. So now you're counting in the go of your other businesses. Does it inspire you to say that I will take more of the Akasa or whichever will chase the two?
You're much too kind. I think definitely growing leaders is something that I'm obsessed with, and I feel that there is so much potential, and I was saying this in a press interview earlier, that whether it's Akasa or any of the other places that I'm involved in, I look at it as a two-part goal for myself. One is, can we create an organization or an institution where we are able to attract the best? But more importantly, I think the real joy comes when they become a fountainhead for talent for the rest of the industry. And when I look around this room, and I don't mean this in an arrogant sort of way, I see so many ex-colleagues in so many leadership positions across the industry, whether it's simulators, eVTOL, airlines, engineering, airports. I see more people that I've worked with in the past. That's, I think, just gives a tremendous amount of sense.
You are watching Travel World Online.